This took place when I was only 16 years old. I am now 20 years old. My parents took me on a cruise. It was this big cruise ship that we were going to be staying on for 1 week with rock stars and bands like Hailstorm, Five Finger Death Punch, and Asking Alexandria. The second day on the cruise, I met Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm and Ivan Moody from Five Finger Death Punch, also Chris Cale. Later that day, my mom and stepdad were sitting with a bunch of people. My parents are social birds and they tend to meet a lot of people on trips. There was this one guy I specifically remember with red hair and beard. His name was Brett, and he told me he was 24. Later on, my parents ended up leaving and I couldn't find them. The only people that were there at my table still were a few older women and the guy I met earlier that day, Brett. I remember walking around asking if they had seen my parents. I ended up going to walk around the ship. Brett followed me. Brett kept asking me if I was thirsty, if I wanted to drink. He could get me a drink with alcohol in it. It was like he was trying to force me to drink. I kept telling him no because I was only 16, and I was in the States, and the legal drinking age here is 21. I wanted to look over the edge of the boat and look down at the water. Every time I looked the other way down and back over at Brett, he came closer to me each time. I got a little creeped out and turned away from him. My back was towards him. I felt him grab tight on my ass. My face turned red and I was really creeped out. I had to get away from him. It was about 2 a.m. and I wanted to go back to my room and get away from Brett. I didn't want him to know where I was headed, so I just went into the elevator room. While waiting for the elevator, Brett put his arm around my waist and slowly started going down my back, touching my ass again. I backed away from him. He came in front of me and he touched my face slightly with 3 fingers on my chin. I jumped and started freaking out, yelling no over and over again. It felt like eternity waiting for that elevator. When we got in, it was nothing but silence. He looked at me in the eyes and said, "Good night." I didn't get much sleep that night. The week went on and I didn't see him at all. Until the last night of our vacation I saw him. His red beard, his green eyes and short orange hair. I froze. At the time I saw him, I was with one of my mom's friends she knew from previous vacations. I told her what happened a few nights before. She knew the owners of the ship and told security. They took my statement and asked me some questions. Later on that day they caught him, only for me to find out that some girl had gotten raped on the ship sometime that week by 3 guys. I also forgot to mention that Brett had 2 older cousins. Okay, so this just happened this morning, and my housemates and I are still pretty freaked out, so I thought I'd share. This morning at 5 a.m. I was woken up when my roommate called my name and told me quietly, "Oh my god, there's someone at the window." It was pitch black, so I assumed she was seeing a weird shadow or something, but then I turned to face the window. I could see a clear outline of a male figure through the blinds, which we keep slanted open so the sunlight wakes us up in the morning. He was standing maybe a foot away from our window and was directly facing us. For some context, our room is on the ground floor and has one large window that has Bundy bars. They're called this because Ted Bundy killed 2 women at an FSU sorority house after climbing through a window, and we therefore having bars on our ground floor bedroom windows in our sorority house. Our room is also on this side of the house, so it's not like someone could have just wandered there. To get to our bedroom window, you'd have to go around a walled-off patio section and a thicket of vines and foliage, so you'd have to put some work into walking up there, which makes me think whatever this guy was doing was very deliberate and planned. I froze and didn't know what to do. It was too dark to take a picture or make out details that could identify the person, so I just kind of sat in my bed, trying to process what was going on. It seemed that he was looking through the window into our room, but after a few seconds of watching him, my roommate and I noticed he was holding a flashlight. To me, it looked like he was looking at the Bundy bars and where they met with the wall to see how secure they were. The bars can only be opened from the inside. Coincidentally, we just replaced them last semester. I'm not sure which possibility is scarier. After a few minutes, the guy went away. We told our house mom immediately and she called the police. Our house has security cameras at every entrance, and apparently they caught footage of him pacing back and forth, so he was there for a while. Still pretty shaken up, especially when I think about what his intentions were, and the times this may have happened while we were asleep and had no idea. I'm worried that he'll return, especially since we're in a sorority house that's home to 24 young women. Update. Thank you all for your kind words and suggestions. All of the other girls have been notified, so our house is definitely taking precautions to keep each other safe. I went around to see everything from the outside and saw a sizable indentation in the foliage in the front of our window where someone clearly crouched or stood. It was also right in front of where the bars were bolted to the wall, so now I definitely think they were messing with the bars, trying to take them off, which thank God is completely impossible from the outside. I was renting a basement apartment a few years back. The place sort of sucked. It was cold as hell and obviously not intended as a bedroom, with exposed cinder block for 2 of the walls. But hey, as a student, you take what you can get. At night, I kept hearing this scraping noise from the walls right under my bed. Sometimes slow and deliberate, and other times a sort of skittering, frenzied sound. I assumed that there was some sort of animal nesting in the wall, and mentioned it to the owner. He said the foundation was improperly laid and moles and rabbits could occasionally get in between a couple of blocks. He said they couldn't fix it before I moved out. I bet he said that to all his tenants. So I just put up with it. One morning I woke up and there was dust all over the floor in my room, and a big smear of it on the pillow next to my face. With my window wide open, the best rationalization I had at the time was I had left the window open, and maybe some dirt from the construction down the road had blown in while I was sleeping. I put it out of my mind and life went on. From that night forward, though, I didn't hear any more scraping from the walls. Later when I was moving out, when moving the bed out of my room, I noticed it. Underneath the bed, there were little cinder block chips and a rusty old rail spike, along with a hole in the wall about 1.5 feet wide. I still remember the feeling spotting that. My blood turned to ice and my stomach knotted up. The hole was impossibly dark. None of the light from the room even seemed to touch it. I ran upstairs and grabbed a flashlight from one of my boxes and shone it into the hole. There was a little crawl space, completely bricked in. No way, in or out, save the newly opened hole in my room. The walls were covered with geometric patterns scraped into the brick. Squiggles, triangles, what looked like a distorted stick man. Layers and layers of them, some faded and hardly visible, others freshly carved. The floor was covered in a thick coat of dust and little shards of rock. In the corner there was a straw doll, stained red. I had been sleeping in a bed inches from this for 1.5 months. 2.5 months, mere feet, from whatever the fuck had been there previously. I don't like dust much anymore.